So here's a pretty big story that I wish was getting some more coverage and some more attention. Really don't see this even being talked about much, even in Bernie's circle. Not even any of his supporters. At least I haven't seen it. Maybe they do exist, but I haven't really seen it. But basically, New York pushed back its primaries in response to Rona. And basically, what's going on is New York is trying to get Bernie Sanders off of the ballot. Now, as you guys know, Bernie Sanders is still amassing delegates, still taking votes. So, if you're still voting, haven't voted yet in the primary, still vote for Bernie Sanders because the more votes he gets, the more delegates he gets, the more bargaining power he has at the DNC, at the convention, which sets up the rules for the next election. So, we got superdelegates off of the first ballot, last time around, which is amazing, right? So, we need to keep doing that kind of a thing. Now, New York is trying to take it off. Now, what's pretty insane is there was this, it says, New York election officials are poised to remove Bernie Sanders from the state's primary ballot on Monday, thanks to an obscure provision in the state budget law enacted by Andrew Cuomo earlier this month. It says, the provision empowers the state's election officials to remove from the ballot any candidate who has announced they have stopped running and is thus, quote, no longer eligible to win the nomination. And it says there are 2 Democratic election officials are set to meet on it. And they're supposed to basically interpret, the statute, I guess. It says it's not very controversial that Bernie Sanders suspended his campaign. I anticipate that we will be removing him. So it's looking like it might get removed now, hopefully. And some people are fighting to make sure that it stays on. Now, what's kind of crazy about all of this is, we need to ask the question, where the hell did this provision come from? Why was this provision put in place in the first place? This is a sort of your sort of emergency state budget law that was enacted, by Andrew Cuomo. The state budget law. It's an obscure provision, really random that you would include that in your state, your budget plan, right? Like, what? What the hell is going on here? A lot of these times there's poison pills and stuff like that. They literally put it in just to do this to Bernie Sanders. That's the reason why they did this. New York is so crooked and so corrupt and so blatantly anti-progressive. It's quite frustrating, to be honest. And obviously, this goes back to even like the days of William Boss Tweed and all that stuff. But it's pretty insane. So, and one of the things that they're saying here is this is pretty ridiculous because what it's going to end up doing is that it's going to affect national, statewide discourse. As well as, it says Jamal Bowman in here, by the way. Make sure to go support Jamal Bowman. They are, people who are down ballot progressives who are going to suffer if Bernie Sanders isn't at the top of the ballot. Because if people are like, Bernie's not on the ballot, I'm not going to go out and vote. Well, hold on a second. Then you're not going to get as many votes for Jamal Bowman, for example, So that's what they're worried about. But what we need to talk about, this is pretty hilarious. It says, Rich as a party, a spokesman for Cuomo, did not elaborate on why the election provision was included in the state budget, but rejected the notion that it was politically motivated. We're fighting a pandemic and have no time for conspiracy theories, he said. Like, are you kidding me? You're not even going to dignify it with the response? Like, you're an absolute joke. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's basic fact. You're talking about putting in a completely irrelevant thing. You're talking about a state budget, allocation of funds, okay? And then you're including this random provision that's like, oh yeah, we're also going to make sure that we, remove people if they're not running and they're still on the ballot. We're going to make sure to take them off. It's like, why are you putting that in there? It's so obvious. It's literally just to dick Bernie Sanders. And it's a big problem with New York. I think that New York is very class-wise, really segregated. And then I think that there's just a lot of people who I guess are shit libs or victims of the system there, the corrupt system that exists in New York. Like you would imagine a state like New York wouldn't have Andrew Cuomo. It would have someone more like a Bernie Sanders type of person. Same thing in California. But it's really depressing when supposed blue states, the liberal states, the literal conservatives call them communist states, okay, like commie California. And, we have Kamala Harris, Dianne Feinstein, and then Gavin Newsom, who's not that crazy progressive at all. So it's like, it's hilarious, but it's also embarrassing at the same time. They literally just put on there, folks. They just put on there in the state budget a provision specifically to screw over Bernie Sanders. So please, if you haven't voted yet in the Democratic primary, please vote for Bernie Sanders. We need those delegates. And hopefully this doesn't happen. If you're in New York, make sure to contact your representative and your state, local people to make sure that Bernie Sanders stays on the ballot in New York. This is a very crucial thing to happen. We need this to happen for him to stay on the ballot.